Hello and welcome back to my channel. This tutorial is a follow-up to the casting on and knit stitches for knitting. I'm now going to show you how to do a purl stitch and also the knit one purl one stitch that's used for the bands on cardigans and neck bands, button bands, that sort of thing. So I'll use the same swatch that I did for the knit stitch and the casting on. So I'm still using a double knit yarn, still using a 4.5mm 4.5mm knitting needle. I'm using this slightly larger knitting needle because it's easier to actually demonstrate the stitch. So where with the knit stitch we worked going into the stitch and underneath the needle, for the purl stitch we do it the other way round, so we're actually going to put the needle in on top. So the right hand needle is going to go on top of the left hand needle and into the stitch, and this time we're going to loop the yarn around and then we're going to come underneath and slide off, where with the knit we went over the top, wound the yarn round and then slid off. So again we're going to go into the stitch with the right hand needle on top of the left. Oops, that's quite easy to do. Yarn around the top of the stitch, pull the needle back and slide off. So we're going into the stitch from right to left, but the right hand needle is going to sit on top of the left hand needle. We're going to wrap the yarn around, we're going to pull this needle back and we're going to slide off onto the right hand needle. So into the stitch on top, wrap the yarn around, pull the needle back and slide off onto the right hand needle, and we carry on all the way along the row in exactly the same way, where we're wrapping the yarn around again, pulling the needle back and sliding off into the stitch, wrap the yarn around, pull the needle back and slide off into the stitch, yarn around the needle, pull the needle back and slide off into the stitch, yarn around the needle, pull the needle back and slide off, making sure to slide off the stitch from this left hand needle, otherwise you'll end up with too many stitches. So again, into the stitch, yarn around the needle, pull the needle back and slide off. We're going to carry on all the way to the end of the row, working exactly the same way. So once we've worked a purl row along with a knit row, that is called a stocking stitch. So where the ridges on just the knit stitch will show on both sides of the sample swatch, you'll see a difference with this stitch, that the ridge is going to sit at the same side as the last knit row. So there we've completed a full row of the purl stitch. So as we now look at the sample, we've got a slightly different finish. That we've got the knit row where the ridge is on the wrong side, and the purl row will also give the ridge on the wrong side. So if you wanted to carry on working the stocking stitch, the next row you would do a knit row as you did on the previous tutorial, followed by a purl row. So you'll do a knit and a purl, a knit and a purl. I'll just do another row of knit and then another row of purl, just to show what the stocking stitch will look like when we've got a full 4 rows together. So the knit row was into the stitch underneath the left hand needle, wrap round, pull back and slip off. Obviously, if you're a beginner, you're not going to be knitting as fast as this, but you can just take your own time. So we've now done the knit row after the purl row, and you can see there that we've got the definite stocking stitch forming. So I'll quickly work another purl row so that we've got a decent band of stocking stitch. So this time with the purl, remember that you're going into the stitch on top rather than underneath, and we're going to wrap the yarn round, pull back and slip off. So I'll go to the end of the purl row, and then I'll show you how we work the knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch. And you'll always be able to tell which row you're actually on, because with the knit row you've got the right side and the purl row will be the wrong side. So if you've got the ridges on the side facing you, then this is going to be a purl row. And remember, it all takes practice. The more you do the knitting and the purling, the neater the work will become. And this swatch is a little bit looser than it would normally be because I'm using a slightly bigger needle. So now we've got the 4 rows, and you can count easily by the little V's. So there we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. So there's the knit row and the purl row together to create a stocking stitch. So I'll now show you how to do a knit 1, purl 1 stitch. With this one it's a little bit different, that you're going to have to bring the yarn to the front and to the back of the work. So we'll start off with a knit stitch. So into the stitch with the right hand needle underneath the left hand needle, yarn around, pull back and slip off. And now we bring the yarn to the front of the work and we do a purl. So we're going on top with the right hand needle on top of the left, and we work a purl stitch. We then need to put the yarn back around to the back of your work and work a knit stitch. We then bring the yarn to the front of the work and do a purl stitch. Yarn to the back and work a knit. Yarn to the front and work a purl. Yarn to the back and work a knit. Yarn to the front and work a purl. To the back and work a knit. To the front and work a purl. And we carry on all the way along, doing alternate knit and purl, and not forgetting that you need to bring the yarn to the front for the purl. We go around to the back for the knit, and to the front for the purl stitch, and to the back for the knit stitch. So there we've got the first row of knit one, purl one. So we turn your work around, and for the following row, because we had an even number of stitches, the first stitch is going to be the knit stitch. And if you can see there, like we said before, the knit stitch is the V, the purl stitch is the ridge. So we'll start the first stitch by working a knit, which is yarn under, the needle under the left needle, yarn around, pull back and slip off, bring the yarn to the front and work the purl stitch, yarn to the back and work the knit stitch, yarn to the front and work the purl stitch, yarn to the back and work the knit stitch. And you can see already that we've got the rib is actually forming even after 2 rows. So we just carry on all the way along, working the purl followed by the knit, and not forgetting to change the yarn to the front for the purl, take the yarn to the back for the knit, to the front for the purl, and to the back for the knit. So I've done another couple of rows of the rib, which is the knit one, purl one, and I've zoomed in a little bit so that you can actually see what the finished knitting looks like. If you'd like to see more knitting techniques, please comment below the video, and I'll add more showing how to increase and how to decrease if you wanted to see different patterns that can be formed quite easily, quite basic ones. Thanks for watching the video. I do hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll try knitting. Please subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!